Hello, metal community. This is Chris over at Depeche Commode. Thank you for tuning in to watch my video, and this is in response to Kellen at Killing for Company and his video about can metalheads be audiophiles? And it's an interesting topic that I have a strong opinion about, and I'm here to share that with you. Uh, just to give you a little background about myself, I've been heavily into vinyl for probably over 15 years. I've also been into vintage gear and hi-fi for just as long. Um, when the hi-fi bug first bit me, it was when I inherited a hand-me-down Sony receiver from 1976. It's an STR 6060, I think is the model, the classic silver face with the wood veneer case. Sounds incredible. And before that, all the stereo equipment that I ever had was just the typical black box type of stuff that you would, just the cheap crap that everyone has. And even to go as low class as having one of the all-in-one units with the CD player on the top and then a cassette deck on the side and the speakers were attached to it. Yeah, I know, something I'm not proud of either. It's definitely a dark time in my life when I owned that. But so with hi-fi and then now my gear that I have now, my amp is a Sansui 9090, which is one of the monster receivers from the late 70s, and it's from 1979, I think, and it weighs 70 pounds. It'll throw your back out if you're out of shape and you try to move it the wrong way. And I've had it properly recapped and serviced a few times, so it's in like perfect working condition. I've had that one for probably about 12 years or so. I ended up getting it for a really good bargain just at the time when I was living in New York. This guy just needed to get rid of it, so I took it like that. Um, and other pieces of equipment that I have are my turntable that I used to have was a Luxman PD441, which was another late 70s model audiophile grade turntable, very heavy. The base itself, I believe, was about 35 pounds. And then the platter, again, was probably about another 10 pounds. If you threw it across the room, it could definitely do some damage. The tone arm was an SME 3009 Series 3 with a Shure V15 cartridge. And then also I'm heavily into digital. I believe CD is the superior format, and we'll butt heads about that at a later time. But I also have a very nice quality DAC that has vacuum tubes on and the output stage to really kind of like warm up the digital output going into my amp. And then my CD player, it's a CD transport, which is just a broadcast quality Tascam rack mount CD transport that you would see I got it from a guy who used to work at a radio station. And I've been collecting CDs for much longer. I've been collecting CDs for most of my life. And I also like other strange formats. I love the Super Audio CD format, which is, I wish that more record labels or would embrace that format because I think it's a really strong digital format that could, really bring a new take on digital audio because it sounds a lot superior to just standard CD and DVD audio. I have a couple of those, but that format's dead pretty much. I've had a mini disc player, and then of course I've had cassette players as well. I don't buy cassettes. I pretty much my purchasing is I always buy the CD for something that I like, and then I buy the record if I feel it's necessary to own. Um, and then I have a degree in audio engineering. I went to a school down in Orlando, Florida, back in the early 2000s for audio engineering, and I did that whole program. And at the time, it was still probably about half analog recording and mastering, and then also half digital with Pro Tools and using digital tape and digital consoles. And I've always been very much into the analog and just sound space in general. It's something I come from a family of people. We always had music playing. I've always loved music, and I've always appreciated taking music to, the next level to make it more enjoyable to listen to. And when it comes to audiophile um, grade equipment or audiophile grade pressings, that's another thing that I've spent too much time researching and critiquing and criticizing, and that's just the nature of the thing about the audiophile world is you're never happy with where you're at. It could always be better. They say it's what you like. The thing is once you experience true hi-fi, there's no going back to just standard regular crappy black box stereo equipment. Um, and I've been on the Hoffman forums and Audio Karma. Has been on that message board for a really long time. And one thing I can say is that yes, metalheads could be audiophiles, but from my experience, metalheads don't have any interest in being an audiophile. And here's a scenario that I believe is very true. Say if an audiophile they get their tax return check and they got $2,000 in hand and it's burning a hole in their pocket. They already know that I'm going to upgrade my phono preamp. I'm going to buy a new cartridge. I'm going to, look into maybe like a new record cleaning machine. Flip side of that is a metalhead has $2,000 in their hand. They're going to the pawn shop and they're going to buy the $200 Sanyo, one piece unit with the turntable on the top. Or no, I'll give them more credit than that. They'll buy the Sanyo standalone record player with no knowledge of when the needle was changed last, and then they'll hook that up to their black box Sony receiver that they bought for $35 that are connected to their Kenwood speakers that have dried foam and the veneer is peeling off and they have beer stains on them. And total package about $200 for that. And then they go and spend the $1,800 on vinyl. Or no, like $1,700 on vinyl, and then the remaining $100 on beer and weed. One thing too is that with the thing about metal is that there's this idea that metal is cheaply produced, or that it's just inferior to a lot of the crap out there. And in my opinion, most metal is recorded and produced very well. It's just that metal is really the only genre of music where you could have a shitty 4-track recording demo from a band and then have a professionally analog recorded and mastered album of the same songs. um and I'm a big collector of, I don't really like 7 inches, but I still buy them anyways. And then, I always like to listen to demos and things like that. And yes, there are things that you can hear I've heard, edits made in a recording, and then once you hear the edit, you can't unhear the edit. Um, I've, and the thing too is it's like with audio, there's your dynamic range, and then there's your sound stage. So with the better quality your stereo system is, the more sound stage you have. And then the dynamic range is what the recording is limited to in terms of sound reproduction of the recording. Yes, a 4-track recording will sound shitty on a hi-fi system, but it's also going to sound shitty on a lo-fi system as well. I've listened to Transylvanian Hunger very loud on my system, and it's amazing what you can hear when you hear it on a good system, and especially when it's really loud. And when it comes to like hearing imperfections in recordings, um, there's a Barry Manilow song that I can hear a tape edit in Weekend in New England towards the end. I can't remember the time code exactly, but there is a tape edit you can hear towards the end of that song. And once I hear it, I can't hear it back. Not saying I listen to a whole lot of Barry Manilow, but I have some guilty pleasures, and yeah. So, but when it comes to it's because audiophiles, it's also a generational thing, and the audiophile labels pay almost no attention to metal whatsoever. It's Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs is a big audiophile reissue label. They've reissued. I have Faith No More, Angel Dust. They reissued Megadeth, Countdown to Extinction, some Sisters of Mercy. I have those on the the MoFi pressings, and they always sound incredible. Because when you get into the audiophile world, is when you start to learn more about where records are pressed, the component, the what is used for the actual vinyl puck itself that's pressed and stamped. Um, and there are some labels like Analog Productions. It's just all dad rock and jazz. The guy who owns Analog Productions is arrogant and has an awful business sense where he just thinks that he just puts out what he likes, and that's that. And but the thing is and that's the way the audiophile community has always been, is that it's been jazz, classic rock, and then classical for a small percentage. It seems like classical fans are mostly overseas. And that's where, especially when you get into Japanese audiophiles, that's where you get into the really crazy hi-fi stuff that just boggles your mind. Like this one guy who I know who had the city where he lives in, he had power run directly from the power lines run directly into his house, not through a city transformer, because it was pure. The power was pure, and it all makes sense, because that's another thing too. When you get into hi-fi, you learn more about how electricity and having a good line conditioner and a good surge protector is really important, and then how that also adds to the quality of the sound reproduction, where it actually lowers your stage floor, and produces a better effect than just having a cheap $6 power strip that you get at Walmart. um I Audiophile labels will have to eventually, they'll adapt. It's because Gen X is largely the metal generation. Yes, there is the tail end of, the boomer generation, where, the entry level stuff, Black Sabbath, and, like the 80s metal and stuff. But Gen X is really where metal really starts, and millennials, and we're getting older, and a lot of us are professionals now, and we have some money to spend. And record labels will start to understand this. And, I see on some vinyl, some VC channel streams now of where like Chad from Analog Productions, people are getting on him like, what about metal? Why can't you do metal? And then he's just like, I put out what I like, and all he likes is just all the same dad rock that every other audiophile label keeps repressing too. And that's another thing that's annoying about audiophile labels is they all just keep reissuing all the same stuff over and over. How many more pressings of Miles Davis Kind of Blue do we really need out there? Now there's this big campaign of all the Steely Dan albums are being reissued and repressed on premium, one-step recording and premium vinyl. And when the originals, which first of all, I don't even like Steely Dan, but the originals are praised as being some of the best sounding mass-produced records out there. So it's like, in a way, I feel like the audiophile community of the earlier, the tail end, the boomers and all that, they're running out of shit to listen to. So they just keep regurgitating all the same stuff over and over again. For just that hope that it's just going to sound a little bit better and a little bit clearer. But there are some things that I have, this is, again, audiophile vinyl, like true audiophile vinyl. It's usually just entry level stuff, for right now. But like I have this is, the And Justice for All. This is 4 LPs. So it's the album, it's, what was this, 8 or 9 songs, I forget, 8 songs, spread across 4 LPs. And they're all 45 RPM, premium virgin vinyl, sounds incredible. You will not find, and it was mastered by George Marino too, who is a really renowned mastering engineer. And that's something else that you learn more about once you get into the audiophile world, is about mastering engineers. You'll hear the names Kevin Gray and Bernie Grundman and George Marino thrown around over and over. So that's one example. I have the Slayer box set that was released probably about 10 years ago, that where it was Rain and Blood through, I think, Christ Illusion, pressed at RTI. Keyword Audiophiles know, RTI pressing, 180 gram virgin vinyl. Sounds wonderful. The Nirvana reissues that were put out probably about 10, 12 years ago that were mastered by Bernie Grundman. I have those, and those sound incredible. Definitely probably the best sounding versions of, the 4 of Incesticide, Smells Like Teen Spirit, In Utero, and then the best sounding versions of those that you can find really at a reasonable price. There are the thing with audiophile gear too is the price. And I saw Alan, why is this turntable $51,000? I know, and why is a Porsche $80,000? It's audiophile equipment. Some of the prices are ridiculous, and when you get into the $50,000-$60,000 components is when it's a rich man's game. I'm sure the person with the $51,000 turntable also has the $80,000 Porsche parked in his garage. As for the machining of the equipment, the engineering behind it, it's usually all, premium materials, handmade. There are some crazy systems out there that use like air suspension on the platter. Like there's an Air Force One, which is like $100,000 turntable. I don't even feel like it should be called a turntable at that point. I feel like it should have some scientific term to it. But there are ones like that where it's like now you're getting into the $80,000, $100,000 price range, and it's not even belt driven or direct drive. It's, air suspension, and it's absolutely crazy. If I had the money, I'd probably be one of those guys. Just not in the in the checkbook for me. But I think the thing with metal vinyl too is metal labels. I've are They market gimmicks more than they market um, quality. Um, like 20 Bucks Spin is an example of a label where they'll put out a release and they'll have 15 different colored variants of it, all of a different splatter or a whatever, but they're flimsy vinyl. They are flimsy. They're probably like 120 grams, something like that. Vinyl weight matters because that adds to. I mean, think about it. You have a flexi disc on your turntable. It sounds like crap, and eventually, you want more room for your stylus to fall into the groove. That's more information that the stamper can press into the record. And the same goes for 33 RPM versus 45 RPM 12 inch. The 45 RPM, there's a lot more space for, when that information is stamped into the record, the needle moves back and forth. So when there's more room for the needle to move in the groove side to side, that's reproducing the sound, giving it more room to breathe, I guess, or to read, the sound that was stamped into the record. Then with the 33, where, the grooves are closer together, and especially a lot of times you'll hear about inner groove distortion. And inner groove distortion is like when you get towards the center label, usually like the last song or so, is when, they start to get really close together. That's why a lot of times on albums that are a single 12 inch, 33 RPM 12 inch, is a lot of times the best songs are either the first two on side A or the first two on side B, because that's where there's the more room for the needle to breathe in the groove. And there are some labels that I really do like. I really appreciate the fact that, like, Southern Lord, they really you know put some money into their packaging. Is always, it's, a lot of times it's high quality packaging and heavy vinyl. Some people complain about clicks and pops and whatever. I think the problem is a lot of people don't know that they also need to clean their vinyl too. Static is something that creates pops, and then also, and you shouldn't just take a record out, open it up, take it out, throw it on the turntable and play it. You should remove the static and clean it. I'm not saying you need the $3,000 ultrasonic cleaner, but really, Groove Glide, which is something that I've used. I use Groove Glide to clean my CDs. You just apply it once on the CD, because CDs also have static on them too, and the CD spins at, I think, 300 revolutions per second. So of course, static that's built up on the CD is going to interfere with the laser head that's reading that information, and that's where jitter comes into play, and things like with digital reproduction. So, and then for cleaning records too, I mean, you don't even need to go out and buy even like the $500 like Project and VPI. They have vacuum cleaner that are like 500 or so. A spin clean is like 80 bucks. I think for like 100 bucks total, you can get some solvents and some things like that to clean records. So yeah, cleaning is important. I think that eventually it's because with metal labels there is this gimmick of selling 18 different variants of colored vinyl, where some of them aren't even pressing black vinyl anymore, which I just think is cringy. It's like, oh, they'll have this, and then the fancy packaging, nice artwork and everything, but then a flimsy, lightweight pressing on some splatter vinyl. Relapse, they used to do the 180 gram black pressings. They're just doing all standard gram now, which is disappointing because they're putting more focus into butterfly swirls and more splatter. Earache, of course, is the biggest disappointment. The one thing about Earache, though, is that their FDR reissues, the full dynamic range issues, I think that, and I've heard some where I've A/B tested like the FDR reissue to a later pressing, and I found that it's the least loud, meaning brick walling, which is unique to kind of like a lot of stuff that was pressed later in the 90s and the early, well, even still today, it's brick walling is really common for some reason. But like Asphyx Death Hammer is one album that's just so brick walled so hard. I hate listening to it just because the dynamic range, there's no space in the instruments. Everything is just right here, just, and it's not a pleasing heavy sound at all. It's just loud and just compressed sounding. So the FDR reissues, the ones that I've heard that I've really kind of like tested is I find that they're kind of probably truest to the original master. So I do respect Earache's effort in that. Everything else could definitely, packaging and all that could definitely use some improvement, but whatever. It's metal labels don't, I think that a lot of them are underestimating who their customer base really is. I feel like with some of these labels, it's like they're thinking that their target demographic is like maybe 25 and under, when really it's, I think, God, I mean, you could 40s, even 50. I mean, people, I know dudes in their early 50s who buy sick metal, and at some point I think that the vinyl boom is definitely going to taper off with the expense that's coming along with it now. And I think physical media just in general is going to taper off because vinyl is getting so expensive. I think CD will make a comeback. But I think the flipper market and the secondhand market is where things are getting ridiculous, of where someone can just take a CD and post it, buy it now, $80 for a CD that should be $20. So yeah, it's talking about hi-fi is something that I also want to focus on with my channel because it's something that I really enjoy toying around with, and I'm also looking to upgrade my system, next year or something, kind of waiting to see how this impending recession, what that's going to look like for the state of the economy. But yeah, so that's my response to Kellen's wonderful video about can metalheads be audiophiles. Yes, they can, but I think that most metalheads would rather spend their money on vinyl than spend it on hi-fi equipment. Yeah. So, anyways, thanks for tuning in. If you made it this long into the video, and yeah, I'll see you later. Thanks.